I'd like to welcome you all to the council meeting and those in the public chamber as well. But I will remind you it is a meeting. Right, do we have any apologies? Councillor Barker.
Madam Mayor, Councillor Williams and Councillor Marshall.
Any others? No, right. Any declarations of interest? No. Right, now we come to the minutes of the extraordinary meeting of council on the 23rd of November. Anybody would like to move the minutes? Are they moved? Yeah, seconded? Okay. Minutes of the meeting of the council held on the 23rd of November. Okay, thank you.
Madam Mayor, could I just query the date of that meeting? Is it the 23rd of November 2013, as printed in the paper?
2016.
Yes, we'll amend that.
Thank you.
No, on the
on the actual papers.
Madam Mayor, just to clarify, on the actual minutes themselves as they present, under the word council, it does say 23rd of November 2013. So congratulations for spotting the error, and we will ensure that's rectified. Thank you.
And you get this month's prize, Councillor Poulter. Right. Now we come to the Mayor's announcements. First of all, a very belated Happy New Year to you all. As councillors will be aware, this Christmas we lost someone known to us all, Councillor Bill Wright. Bill had served as councillor for Derwent Ward since 2014 and had been deputy leader of the UKIP group throughout that time. He was someone who was passionate about his local community, and as many of you will know, he was involved in many ventures within the ward long before he was elected. Sadly, Bill had suffered with ill health for a couple of years, but he was always assured of a warm welcome from across the chamber for meetings of council and was never afraid to make a contribution to the debate. Bill passed away on Christmas Eve. I was pleased to be able to attend the funeral in my capacity as mayor, and was even more pleased to see councillors from across the political spectrum, as well as several officers, in attendance to pay their respects. It was a most moving service, and one in which we learned a great deal more about Bill, the husband, father and grandfather, rather than just Bill, the councillor. In a few moments, I will invite Councillor Graves to make his own speech about Bill, and will invite contributions from across the floor. But before I do that, I must also report to councillors the passing of two other individuals who many of you will know well, particularly those among us who have been involved in ceremonial events. Sir John Bather was Her Majesty the Queen's representative in Derby as Lord Lieutenant of Derbyshire for 15 years between 1994 and 2009, having previously held the position of High Sheriff of Derbyshire. Among Sir John's other remarkable achievements, he was reported in the local press to have overseen the graduation of around 20,000 University of Derby students. He also served as a member of Derby Cathedral Council for many years. Sir John died on the 29th of December, age 82. And the third one is Bernard Page, MBE. He was best known for his work within the Derbyshire Royal British Legion, which he chaired for many years. Within the city, he was a popular face at all RBL events and was always to be found making sure such events as Remembrance Sunday ran smoothly. A former Rolls-Royce employee, Bernard was a terrific support to the Mayor's office here in Derby and worked closely with a succession of employees to bring about a multitude of civic events. He died aged 79 earlier this month. I will now invite Councillor Graves to speak about Bill Wright and will then invite contributions from across the floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Very rarely does this chamber experience a true gentleman, a man of honour and integrity. Despite a very short period of office, Councillor Bill Wright was such a man, and he left a profound imprint on the council and his constituents. One thing that set Bill apart was his trusting heart with all those around him. Although that allowed some to take advantage of him, in the main this attribute gained him great respect with all the political parties, officers and residents. For those who attended his funeral, you would have seen what a close family he and his wife Val had created. You could see why he had such a big heart. I first met Bill in 2013 when he joined UKIP. After attempts of trying to get elected as an independent councillor. You recall those photos taken of him on election night. You could have seen his face, the pride he felt achieving yet another milestone in his life. I cannot explain how honoured I feel to have been part of that life. Bill had qualities that are really found in politicians, and I am privileged to call him my friend, a good friend. Bill was of the old school, a salt-of-the-earth family man, always willing to help. He was always dressed immaculately, such was his respect for his position. It was part of his psyche. Bill was involved in the local community well before he even put himself up for election. He was involved in what is now the Revive Centre and was a huge critic of the waste of millions of pounds of public money in Derwent Delivers, something we spoke about only days before his death. Not only was he a local community man, he was also a military veteran, a part of his life that also filled him with huge pride. There is so much I could say about Bill, but now is not the time or place. Derby City Council and Derwent Ward have been privy to a very special man. It was a sad day when he died, and I for one will miss him. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Graves. Is there anybody else that would like to speak about Councillor Wright? Councillor Rawson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to begin on behalf of the Labour Group by offering our sincere condolences to Bill's wife Val and to his family. Bill was blessed with a large family to support him, and I know that they all absolutely adored him as a husband, dad and granddad. As a fellow councillor in Derwent Ward, I got to know Bill very well. Bill had lived in Chaddesden for more than 40 years and was well known and respected locally. This made it quite difficult for us at election times because every door you knocked on, people knew Bill and everyone had a kind word to say about him, which made him quite formidable at the ballot box. Bill was first and foremost about representing the local community. He wasn't bothered about political arguments or the theatricals that go on in this chamber. He just wanted to do his best for his neighbours and for his local community by representing them as their local councillor. When Bill was elected, he got stuck into the job with total commitment and enthusiasm. And it was so sad that he suffered his stroke so soon into his term of office. But in true spirit, Bill didn't give in. He fought back with all his energy, managing to fulfil his duties as a councillor, attending neighbourhood board meetings despite his illness. Bill very nearly joined the Labour Group during the autumn last year, and it was a disappointment to us all that this didn't quite happen, as he would have found a very warm welcome on the Labour benches. Bill was a kind, caring, decent man who wanted the very best for Chad, and he'll be sorely missed by everyone in the Labour Group and by his constituents in Derwent Ward. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Rawson. Councillor Harwood.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. First, I'd like to thank the Conservative Group for giving me the opportunity to pay tribute to a fellow colleague and a friend, William, better known as Bill. Bill and I became friends about 20 years ago when I met him outside his home in Derwent Ward when I was canvassing. Bill asked me what I was delivering, and when I replied an election leaflet for the Conservative Party, he told me bluntly what to do with it. Half an hour later, he took the leaflet from me and said, I might vote for your party after all. I thought I'd converted him. We met each other on numerous occasions over the years and mainly discussed politics, particularly local politics. In 2006, he said, I certainly would like to be a councillor, and I told him I would be standing in 2007 elections as an independent in Oakwood Ward. He immediately said, I will stand again as an independent in Derwent. Another person standing as an independent was Brenda Longworth, and she was going to stand in Bolton and did so. So the three of us linked up together, had meetings, and even had our own rosettes. We all lost, of course. I carried on, and history tells the outcome. Bill never lost the urge, and he stood as an independent on many occasions thereafter. But when he ran me to telling me he was again putting up in Derwent for UKIP, this did not surprise me, because I was aware of the fact that he was talking to them. Whilst I do not expect him to win first time, he shocked everybody, except his UKIP colleagues, by taking the ward. More so because it was against, in my opinion, Derwent's outstanding councillor, David Roberts. Our friendships as a result of this election, despite us being in different parties, came stronger. And when he joined the Oakwood Royal British Legion, we would meet on Wednesday nights at branch meetings and over a game of dominoes discuss council affairs. When meeting, Bill's eyes would light up and he would have that mischievous grin. This became very prominent along with a chuckle when he made me knock. That's a term in dominoes. So ask me after if you don't understand. When Bill had a stroke, it was a disaster, but he fought it bravely and it did not stop him doing his council work, and moreover it did not stop him coming to the British Legion meetings. With the help of his carer, Sarah, he continued to play dominoes with relish. Despite knowing that Bill was very ill, his death did come as a great shock to me, and I thank the leader of the UKIP, Alan Graves, for ringing me that afternoon to tell me the bad news. Bill was well liked in Derwent Ward, and this was emphasised at his funeral, with many Derwent residents being in attendance. And now I speak, Madam Mayor, for his wife Val and his family, and indeed myself, when I thank you for your attendance at Bill's funeral. I also link that along with the Chief Executive, the Chief Legal Officer, I hope I've got that right, Head of Member Services, and fellow councillors. This was greatly appreciated, and I think and hope that Val is with us tonight up in the gallery. This service portrayed how much Bill was thought of in his personal life and his outside interests. More so, the help he gave, even before he became a councillor, to the residents of Derwent Ward. I'll always remember Bill for his glittering eyes and his mischievous smile. Bill, may you rest in peace. I was proud to be one of your friends.
Thank you, Councillor Harwood. Councillor Skelton.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Although I didn't know Bill very well, certainly not until he came onto the council, it was very apparent, having had a few conversations with him, that here was a really decent gentleman. I think that's the best way of describing him. A thoroughly decent individual. It's very sad that he has died so early, and it's sad that he had the stroke when he did, because otherwise he would have given, I'm sure, many more years' service to the residents of Derwent. And he was very well liked by those residents. He was well known within the community. Numbers of friends I have who live there speak very, very highly of him. And I think everybody is very sad that he has now passed. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Skelton. Councillor Carr.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to say a couple of words about Bernie Page. Bernie and I worked together for almost 20 years, and he was a really, really nice guy to work with. Our paths only now crossed since we both retired at ceremonial events such as the ones you're referring to, but we always had a chin wag. And working with Bernie was a laugh. When you ever wanted a sticky patch to help you out, it would enliven the occasion with one of his many tales from his naval service, none of which I can repeat in this chamber. And when I wanted to borrow a particular piece of kit for one of my projects, he would always respond with that cheeky grin you can see up there and say, "Sorry, I haven't got one." I'd like to because his death was quite sudden, I won't be able to get to his funeral, so I'd just like to pay my personal tribute and say, I'll miss you, Bernie. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Carr. Do you want to say something, Councillor Pegg?
Yeah, it's with regards to Bernard. I'm sure many of the former mayors of the city who've worked with Bernard will thank him for all the guidance and everything that he gave throughout all the remembrance services and other military services that went on throughout this city, of which I was very proud to be part of. Bernard was devoted to the Royal British Legion along with his family, and he worked tirelessly for the troops, no matter what branch of the forces they were in. He would always have a word to say about whatever battle or remembrance event it was. He knew so much about everything, and I learned a great deal from him, and he will sadly be missed by this council for helping us organise the events throughout the city.
Thank you, Councillor Pegg. Councillor Bayliss.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to pay tribute to two people. Firstly, Bernard Page, MBE, then Sir John Bather. Bernard, when I was leader of the council, as always before that, supported the council in everything he did and everything we could do in terms of helping the troops. Certainly, part of the focus of this council is making sure that serving soldiers were not in any way discriminated against by our policies, to ensure that we made sure that we signed up and made sure we signed up to the Armed Forces Covenant. Certainly Bernard was key to doing that. I have to pay tribute to him and also supporting a number of constituents I helped who had issues at post their service. He certainly was a fount of all knowledge, and in two cases in recent years we helped resolve issues regarding people with mental health issues, referring them to Headley Court, and also making sure that people who were injured post their service receive the appropriate support and advice regarding benefits. So I'd like to pay personal tribute to that. I also would like to say that he was a tremendous support to myself and Councillor Anderson in the Count Them In campaign. There is no doubt that he was influential in supporting with that, and we were successful in persuading other councils in Derbyshire to support them. Certainly, I believe Amber Valley was the first after that, but certainly part of the motion that we took through this council has been supported by other councils in Derbyshire, and Bernard's influence was part of that. And I think that's something we should be justly proud of. Certainly, in terms of Bernard, we will miss in Derbyshire a fantastic supporter and advocate for Military Covenant and the Armed Forces, and hopefully we can pay a suitable tribute to him at an appropriate point in the future. And personally, I will miss him greatly. So John Bather, I met him when I was first elected to council some time ago, but the thing I do remember was when Councillor Jackson was the mayor. We were up at Crouch Stand in July, and like all Derbyshire weathers, it rained horizontally. John was quite a tall chap. He must have been over 6 foot tall, particularly his cap on. I can remember I was trying to keep the mayor dry with an umbrella, and I think that's the top half was successful. But I remember John standing there, erect and attention, at salute like he is now, with the rain running down his peak cap, off his nose, but he didn't move and he didn't flinch. And as servant of Derbyshire, we couldn't have hoped for somebody better. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Bayliss. Councillor Harwood.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I too would like to pay a tribute to Bernard Page. Bernard was the President of the Royal British Legion in the area that he lived. and I'm well aware of what he has done over a long time, and great credit to him. I was proud when I became the President of the Royal British Legion for Oakwood that Mr. Page was available to talk to me and give me some tips, and I'll take those away with me because they've been a great advantage to me in the role. I do like to take this opportunity on behalf of the Royal British Legion Oakwood branch to give my condolences to his relatives and his wife, because at the end of the day he was a brilliant man and well worth the MBE that he was given by the government for his work in the Royal British Legion. A very sad occasion, but there we are.
Thank you, Councillor Harwood. Councillor Dinser.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I too would like to offer my condolences and support the comments that have been made about Bill Wright and Bernard Page. I want to sort of just share some of my memories about Sir John Bartha. He became Lord Lieutenant the year that my father was the Mayor of Derby, elected as a historic election at that time. And I remember fondly many civic events where I met Sir John Bartha and his wife, and they were excellent emissaries for the royal family in terms of any events that happened. They were very kind and worked closely with my father when he was the mayor and the civic office here. And subsequent to that, I've begun to appreciate the role that the Lord Lieutenant plays in terms of representing and organising with the police any occasions when the royal family visit the great city of Derby and Derbyshire County. And I kept in touch with him throughout those years, not in the recent past, and he was always a professional, supporting the military and doing his duty as a civic representative of the Queen and the royal family in Derbyshire. So I remember him fondly, and I certainly remember the first year I think he was the Lord Lieutenant, and how energetically and diligently he carried out his duties.
Thank you, Councillor Dinser. I think if nobody else, Councillor Webb.
Madam Mayor, I did prompt you earlier. 3 gentlemen there who I've known, and the word gentleman can be used for all of them. I'll particularly mention John Bather, a gentleman with humour and respect. John, I first met at my first official engagement as mayor of the city, and it was going to be my maiden speech to the county, and I sought advice from him. And he said, "Fly by the seat of your pants, because that's what I always do." And that was the humour of the man. Can I use a quote from today's memorial service for Sir John Bather, which would cover all 3 of these gentlemen? To mourn too long for those we love is self-indulgent, but to honour their memory with a promise to live better for having known them gives purpose to their life and some reason for their death. God bless all of them.
Thank you, Councillor Webb. We will now observe a minute's silence for all 3 gentlemen. Thank you, everybody. Please be seated. For my next announcement, I am pleased to extend an invite to all of you to buy tickets for the Mayor of Derby's charity ball, which has been scheduled for Friday 24th of March at Derby Conference Centre. It will be a black tie event with music provided by the phenomenal Hot House Music, magic from Ed Sumner, and a question and answer time from BBC Radio Derby Sport duo Craig Ramage and Owen Bradley. All profits will go to Children First Derby, Down Syndrome Derby, the Hope Centre and Derby Hospitals Charity. I would urge you all to speak to the Mayor's office about getting your tickets. One small piece of housekeeping. Some members will have spotted that the agenda moves from item 16 to item 18. Officers have confirmed this is merely an error, so I can confirm we're not missing any papers. And finally, I told you at the last meeting that I would be introducing the new honorary recorder for Derby, Judge Shant, at today's meeting. Unfortunately, Judge Shant now has another engagement, but I look forward to welcoming her at a future meeting. Right, moving on to item 6, statements. Statements from Council Cabinet members. We have none. Then we come to questions from the public. As usual, I will run down the list of questioners and offer those present an opportunity to ask a supplementary question. And can I just reiterate, please, that it should be a question? Thank you. Okay, Dorothy, do you have a supplementary question for Councillor Shankar?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, I do. I'd just like to point out, though, that the answer is incorrect in that the pre-screening won't remove recyclates because they need those for burning, especially the calorific plastics, and they've only said they might take out 10%. So that was incorrect, that part of the answer. Regarding the background air pollution in Sinfin, that has now worsened because of added industrial capacity. The Rolls-Royce engines being bigger that they're testing, meaning more nitrogen dioxide, more air pollution. And I believe that there has been an answer to one of the other respondents stating that there will be some more air pollution monitoring. I would like to ask, does the Council agree with the Government Minister, Teresa Coffey, who yesterday said that landfilling some plastics was better than incineration, although we believe reducing, reusing and recycling is even better than that?
Hi, Dorothy.
No.
Mr Connolly, do you have a supplementary question for Councillor Banwaite?
Yes, I do, Madam Mayor. Will the Council be removing the contractor Elia from the Council House when its contract is up, this being in line with its decision to take the Mad Hatter's Tea Room in Alveston Park?
Thank you, Mr Connolly. The Council reviews all its leases in order to ensure the best way forward and to ensure it maximises the benefit for the public purse. Thank you.
Okay, Mr Willoughby, do you have a supplementary question for Councillor Russell?
I do, thanks very much, Madam Mayor. You present an improving picture in your answer from the 3% in 2015-16. So what strategy are you adopting to ensure this improvement is maintained and all the plans going forward are issued within the required 20 weeks?
Good evening, Mr Willoughby. Thank you for your question. Yes, we do have an improving picture. We've had to deal, as you'll see within the original answer, with some historic, devastating cuts to this service, which left us incapable of dealing with the amount of conversions that we had to under the statutory timescales. We have reinvested in that service, drafted in additional staff to give the children of Derby what they need educationally. We are also tendering out, as you'll see from an answer in a later question that was put to me by a councillor, that we are tendering out for even more support to be drafted in to continue to make sure that we progress as planned.
Thank you. Mr Bacon, do you have a supplementary question for Councillor Banwaite?
I do, Madam Mayor, thank you. Good evening, Councillor Banwaite. Do the parties for the waste plant have a maximum payment they will pay Eversheds to fight to hide the contract from the public?
Thank you, Mr Bacon. The advice we've received is that this matter is commercially confident. This is the same view that the county hold and other parties that we're involved with, so therefore it will not be appropriate for me to comment any further. Thank you.
Right. Mr Winfield, I believe that you are to have a verbal response. Councillor Shankar. Oh, yeah. Okay. Do you want to ask, sorry, Mr Winfield, do you want to ask the question?
This one is.
Okay. Thanks very much. Given the current financial position of the council, what was the total cost of the Alistair Ward by-election to local taxpayers for the Conservative group putting forward a fraudulent candidate? What governance improvements have the council made to try and stop things like this happening again?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Mr Winfield, for your question. Just touching the governance improvements first, let's make it quite clear, responsibility for all the election procedures and the integrity planning rests with the returning officer and the deputy returning officer. In our case here in Derby, that's the Director of Governance and our Chief Executive, respectively. I'm pleased to advise that Derby City Council has some of the most robust integrity plans in the country to combat election fraud. There is a continuous review of our integrity planning to ensure the voter has confidence in the electoral process. The Council's working relationship with Derbyshire Constabulary goes from strength to strength, and there are joint planning meetings, proactive information sharing and strong evidence-based decision-making at all stages of planning for and delivery of an election. Derby is one of 18 named authorities by the Electoral Commission as being at higher risk of election fraud, but this does not mean in any way our systems are wrong or corrupt. Quite the contrary. The Council is required to undergo external scrutiny and assessment against all aspects of integrity planning and performance measures by the Electoral Commission. The two prosecutions, one in 2013 and more recently Richard Smalley in 2016, proves the success of our procedures and the strength of our partnership working with Derbyshire Constabulary. Richard Smalley's case in last year was the first time a custodial sentence has been handed down for the offence of providing false information to the Council for election processes. In fact, our returning officer is sharing our good practice nationally. Earlier this year, on 19th of January, she gave a presentation to Solace, that's the Society of Local Authority Chief Executives, at their annual elections conference, which was attended by Christopher Skidmore, MP, Minister for Constitution, and the Cabinet Office and the Electoral Commission. There's more events planned this year where our returning officer will be going and sharing our best practice with other authorities. And in fact, I think on one of these events we'll be sharing a platform with Sir Eric Pickles MP himself. Going back to the costs for the Alistair by-election are still being collated, but we believe them costs will be in the region of £25,000 to £30,000.
Thank you. Mr Winfield, do you have a supplementary question for Councillor Shanker?
I do. Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. First, thanks very much, Councillor Shanker, for the response he's given. It's reassuring to know the controls of governance that are being put through by the council to stop incidents like this happening again. I just want to ask him, could he please confirm for me, though, is he aware, or can he confirm, if the nomination papers for Mr Smalley, if there's any signatures from any elected members in this chamber on that nomination paper?
Thank you, Mr Winfield. I can confirm whether members of this council had signed the nomination papers for Mr Smalley. But, Madam Mayor, with your indulgence, if I may, I think that question, rather than for me to answer that, should be answered by the leader of the Conservative group. Could we put that question to the leader of the Conservative group, please?
Not really, no. No.
Okay. In that case,
no,
I can confirm at least 3 elected members of this council, no member of this group, but 3 elected members of this council had indeed signed the fraudulent nomination papers for Richard Smalley, members who I would expect would have known whether he lived in that ward or not. I have copies here of the notice of poll, and then members' names are on this notice of poll. I'm more than happy for you to have a copy of this, Mr Winfield.
Right, that's okay, Councillor Shanker, but you're not going to read the names out, are you? Yeah, but I'd still rather that you didn't do it in the council chamber. Thank you. Right, we have several questions relating to the Sustainability and Transformation Plan to Councillor Repton. Mrs Lambert, do you have any? Do you have a supplementary question for Councillor Repton?
Yes, I do. Would you like me to put both supplementary questions now? Just one. Does the council support the view that it is possible to retain the service and get rid of 535 beds?
This is primarily a health plan where we have no veto and we have limited influence. However, we will use and continue to use whatever influence that we can have to make sure additional resources go into the health service, and also then enable us in this city to make sure that where people are ill and where they're required to go into hospital, to try to prevent them going to hospital in the first place. If they go into hospital, we need more resources to support them where our constituents want them to be supported, that's at home, wherever it is safe and possible to do so. There is a motion on tonight's agenda that makes it quite clear where our values are. We fully support every single move to make sure that the health service and social care is properly funded in this city and throughout the country. And this is plainly not happening at the present time. And we'll work with colleagues, with yourself and other organisations to make sure the NHS and social care are properly funded. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Mrs James, is Mrs James here?
Yes.
Do you have a supplementary question for Councillor Repton?
I do.
Okay.
Yes. You say you have no veto, and you say you have no veto, no ability to stop the STP, but do you not have to sign it off, finally?
I think has been as explained in the answer, Liz, that like most councils in this country, we've signed up in principle. And the reason that we've done that is because we desperately need resources where it's safe and where it's possible to do so without negatively affecting NHS resources, to transfer them into the public to better support those people who don't want to go into hospital, those that are in hospital and languishing there unnecessarily can be better supported at home. And that is the only reason that we have signed up in principle to this document. As I said earlier, We'll be using our influences wherever we can to make sure that it's done properly. And we'll also be using our influence locally and nationally, as we've already started to do, to make sure that the actual debate is one for the need for additional resources for the health service in this country and for social care in this city. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. And I apologise if I pronounce this wrong. Mr. Giaquinto, do you have a supplementary question for Councillor Repton?
Thank you, Mrs. Mayor. We are going to read the reply supplied by the Chief Officer of Southern Derbyshire Clinical Commissioning Group. It's, we've only had eyes of this document just recently, but we will try and come back to you and act in a positive way. Thank you, Mrs. Mayor.
Mrs. Lambert, do you have another
yes,
supplementary question? Okay.
Is Martin Rawson prepared to speak at a public meeting organised by the Save Our NHS group in Derby about the STPs and the plight of the NHS?
I can't speak for Councillor Rawson, but if you're meaning Councillor Repton, then I'm happy to speak anywhere with anybody. But the primary people that you need to be there are people from the health and NHS. I think that's what we want to say, because I'll be asked possibly questions I can't possibly answer because I'm not here and I can't answer, sadly, for the NHS. I wish that I could. I wish I had the resources to use them probably more effectively and to be demanding more. But I'm happy to come along. But the main people that you need there are from health. And if we can facilitate that in any way, then more than possible. I'm more than happy for you to come here with your colleagues and talk to me in person. More than happy to do that. Thank you, Chair. Madam.
Thank you. Mrs. James, do you have another supplementary? No? Okay, thank you.
Well, only is there a difference between signing off and signing off in principle? What is the difference?
I think it's what it says, really. It was the start of a process about generally are we supportive in transferring where it's safe and possible to do so, resources where people are languishing in A&E, languishing in hospitals to be supported at home. Yes, we are in support of that in principle. Are we in favour of preventing people to go in hospital? And we have something known as a Home First. I was there this afternoon up in Athlone Close, which prevents people going into hospital in the first place. Are we in support of that? Of course we are. So I think that just gives a flavour of generally what we're in support of. But I think we're very supportive of yourselves in terms of our real concerns about the lack of funding for health service. I do believe, with all the greatest of respect, they're two slightly different issues, and we'll stand 100% behind you and fight for additional resources for health and social care. Let me reassure you all of that. And I we're pleased to see each and every one of you in my office over the next few weeks and months to chat about it further. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Giaquinto, do you have another supplementary question for Councillor Repton?
Mrs. Mayor, thank you. I would just like to thank Councillor Repton for his kind invitation, and we will take you up on that, sir. Thank you very much indeed.
Mr. Connolly, do you have a supplementary question to Councillor Shankar?
Yes, I do, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, there's a question, but because some councillors wasn't here last year, they've been newly elected, there has to be a short statement with that for them to understand what happened last year, and it goes like this. The council spent £1.5 million recently in fees for consultants, valuing assets, accountancy and design work.
I'm sorry, Mr. Connolly.
Floor.
You must just have your supplementary question, please.
And also, we must not forget Banwait's Rings. Yet the public of Derby still have no toilets at Nottingham.
Move on. Mr. Connolly, if you're not going to ask your question, I'm afraid I'm going to have to move on. You don't. No, it is not to make a statement. It is to ask a question.
There are still no toilets at Nottingham Road Cemetery 1 year on from bringing these issues to the council's attention. When will these toilets be done?
I think that question, Madam Mayor, has been answered. We're working as fast as we can, given the other priorities our officers have, the other priorities that we must use our resources on. A number of options have been being looked at. I've asked our officers to look at renovation versus a new build, the location where the new build would go. So as soon as we have them plans available, we'll try proceeding as quickly as we can.
Thank you. Mr Bacon, do you have a supplementary question for Councillor Shanker?
I have, Madam Mayor. Yes, thank you. Good evening, Councillor Shanker. Particle air pollution is recognised as a killer of thousands of people across the UK, including many in this city. Considering DEFRA now target Derby in relation to air quality, are there any proposals to now include PM 2.5 particle monitoring at the sites you've named in your answer?
Thank you, Mr Bacon. I'm not aware of any proposals to include any other monitoring at them sites, but I will check that out in detail with officers and come back to you.
Thank you. Dorothy, do you have a supplementary question for Councillor Shanker?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, thanks, Councillor, for not denying that there be hazardous radioactive waste mixed with clinical, blood and body parts, etc. at the Sinfin incinerator plant. How will the Council's health protection team, and yourself, of course, be relating information to your constituents, your residents in the area, namely Victory Road, Kitchener Avenue, Wilmore Road, Caxton Street, Dryden Street, etc., about this added pollution, noise, smell?
Not sure I quite understand the question, Dorothy. I'll try and answer that. A number of them streets, as you'll know, aren't in my ward. They're in the ward of Normanton, and I'm sure Normanton, Caxton Street, Normanton councillors will endeavour to keep residents informed about that. So the EA consultation period is now closed. The EA will make a decision on whether they revise the permit for Shanks to operate. We'll keep residents informed as we do. There's a community liaison advisory group that members of the council and residents attend, along with officers at both Derbyshire and Derby City Council, along with representatives from the plant. So we'll continue attending those and sharing that information with residents, as we've been doing for the last year or so.
Thank you. Now we move on to councillors' questions. Councillor Pegg, do you have a supplementary question for Councillor Banwaite?
Yes, Madam Mayor. Councillor Banwaite, can you explain the historical position, and was this a factor as to why the council ended the lease with this party, please?
Thank you, Councillor Pegg. The historic position is that, unfortunately, that particular party was in rent arrears 86% of the lease period, and arrears is a factor that the council will take into consideration when determining whether to continue or renew a lease. Thank you.
Councillor Nater, do you have a supplementary question to Councillor Banwaite?
No, I don't, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Ashburner, do you have a supplementary question?
I was going to ask if it gets a verbal response. So.
I'm expecting a verbal response.
Okay, yeah, sorry, I hadn't read down that far yet. Okay, thank you. Right, would you like to read your question then, Councillor Ashburner?
Thank you. What will the expected percentage increase in taxi licensing fees for individual drivers after the decision at the last full council meeting to adopt the second points-based licensing system? What's the increase going to be, percentage-wise?
Thank you, Councillor Ashburner. Councillor Barker, do you want to ask your question as well?
It's virtually the same, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Shanker.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My answers are virtually the same. But just before I go into my answer, I'd just like to point out to both Councillor Barker and indeed Councillor Ashburner, this shock horror figure of the cost of the new administrative system, which I wholly stand behind, was in fact detailed and laid out in the papers for the full council meeting that we had in November. So I'm rather surprised these questions are coming in 2 months later. Had members done what you should be doing and scrutinised those papers, asked those questions, this could have been dealt with 2 months ago. But indicative costs for the new system, like I say, are set out in November 16, full council report, which I'm still challenging to be reduced where possible. The cost of the service need to be recovered not just from drivers and operators, but vehicle proprietors. And at the beginning of January 17, across all of these areas, there was just over 2,500 licences in place in total. Breaking the current additional figure down simply across the number of licences over a year works out to be a few pence per licence per day, which I believe is a price worth paying for the increased safety this offers to both the public of Derby, visitors to Derby and users of taxis.
Thank you. Councillor Ashburner, do you have a supplementary question for Councillor Shanker?
Yes, we'd rather appreciate an actual answer to the actual question, the percentage increase, rather than a quote in pence per day. But given that the data that is given the answer to was not available 2 months ago, how was I supposed to know that then? Thank you.
I can answer that. That data, Madam Mayor, I've not got the full council report with me, but the detail of the breakdown of those costs per officer, per position, are absolutely detailed and in the papers for the November full council meeting.
Yeah. Councillor Barker, do you have a supplementary question for Councillor Shanker?
Yeah, certainly, Madam Mayor. I'm sorry, Councillor Shanker, I'm not happy with that answer because I will recollect that meeting and supporting at the time the introduction of the points-based system. But all throughout the process, I have asked on many occasions how many more staff it would require and whether or not it was foolproof in relation to the appeals going to court. I was told on many occasions it wouldn't require any more staff and that the model that was used in Leicester, in actual fact, because it was such a robust system, did not require any litigation in relation to the appeals process. Now we find there's a 350% increase in Leicester, and Leicester are probably in the process of going back to a member-led system. So that's, and I don't recollect any figures being in the papers at the November meeting. Consultation needs to be done in relation to any increase in figures, and you say it's pence, but all right, I'll say it's round about £100 a year. Anticipated that this increase will actually be put to the trade.
Councillor Barker.
I'm going to. This is a question.
It is a question.
It is a question. Yeah.
It really is a question.
It really is a question. I'm asking if these costs are put to the members of the trade, will it increase the number of drivers, operators going outside of this area to, in actual fact, register their vehicles? Then when they come back into the area, we in Derby will not have a robust system and safe for the people of Derby because we have no control whatsoever of them. What is he going to say to the people of Derby then?
I'm absolutely flabbergasted, Madam Mayor. We've had Councillor Eric Ashburn admitting he's not read the papers and seen them figures in the paper for such an important council meeting of the full council in November. We've now had the representative from the Conservative group who champions himself as being the leading light on taxi licensing and matters in that relation, also confirming he'd not read those papers, although endorsing the administrative system. The figures cost-wise, the figures post-wise was detailed in that report. And I think it's also wrong to suggest Leicester are going back to a subcommittee system. I've had conversations with the lead member in Leicester. They're doing a consultation with a view of implementing the temporary one-year system as a permanent system. That's the focus of the review undergoing in Leicester. I can also confirm to Councillor Barker, I've made lots of representation to government ministers and to leaders and chief execs of neighbouring councils who continue to issue licences for drivers who aren't operating in their area. We've made some progress in that. Rosendale have stopped doing that. I'm meeting with members of Gedling next week. And now all I would ask is Councillor Barker and his group actually help us and also lobby the government and ministers to close down this loophole.
Right, thank you. Councillor Graves, do you have a supplementary question for Councillor Rawson?
Yes, Madam Mayor, thank you. Thank you for the answer, Councillor Rawson. Can you advise the Chamber if it is within proper council regulations to spend Section 106 money before it is received?
Thank you, Councillor Graves. I confirm, yes, as far as I'm aware, this is a regular way in which Section 106 monies are transferred between local authorities. You'll be aware that all councillors are consulted on the use of Section 106 within their ward, and I'd like to take this opportunity again of commending Councillor Pegg and the Mackworth councillors on driving forward this project and delivering this car park, which is very popular amongst the residents of Mackworth.
Thank you. Councillor Skelton, have you got a supplementary for... Can we quieten down upstairs, please?
No, it would have been nice to have a real answer.
Councillor Skelton, do you have a supplementary question? No? Okay. Right. Councillor Harwood, do you have a supplementary question?
Yes, I do, Madam Mayor. Thank you. Thank you for your reply, Councillor Shanker. To be honest, Councillor Shanker, when this motion was put forward at the council meeting in September, I was astounded when the Labour ruling group voted it out. I'm even more astounded now in view of the comments you made earlier in this meeting. Your councillor, Hardle Dinsel, who is also the police commissioner, stated on Radio Derby when asked what
Councillor
I've done to
Harwood,
it.
what is the question?
Thank you for that. I will get the red card out in a minute if you want it.
Can we have the question,
Yes, I'm coming to this. It's in this. It's in this. Yeah. Your councillor, Hardle Dinsel, who is also the police commissioner, on Radio Derby, when asked why it had been voted out by your party, stated it did not go far enough. So why did your party not put in an amendment at the September meeting when on all other motions made by other parties, you're very quick on the night to move an amendment? So why did you do it on this occasion?
Thank you, Frank. Firstly, I'd challenge you to provide evidence of our group amending every single motion, because I just don't think that is true. Secondly, as I've said in my initial answer, and it was the answer then in September, there is no pilot scheme for us to volunteer into. When the government announced a pilot scheme, I've said here, we will openly volunteer ourselves to fully participate in that scheme. At the moment, there's nothing to volunteer for, and you know that, Frank.
Right, carry on, please. Councillor Smale, do you have a supplementary question for Councillor Afzal?
I do, Madam Mayor. Thank you very much for the response, Councillor Afzal. Whilst I understand some of the issues for the delay, the issue has been going on for many months now. Local businesses have been affected with massive loss of revenue, and the general public have almost given up at peak times to dispose of their waste, which has potentially led to the increase of fly tipping. Who is going to take responsibility for the length of delays, which should have been resolved many, many months ago when it was first raised up? Thank you.
Thank you very much for your supplementary. What was that? It's all right when you've had a good laugh. Councillor Smale, this is obviously an ongoing issue, and as I've explained in the answer, it's going through a legal agreement, and the work is actually programmed for Q1 of this year. So we're not happy with the situation the way it is, but with all the different bodies that are involved, it's important we do actually follow the legal procedure, which we are doing. Thank you.
Councillor Graves, do you have a supplementary question? Councillor Holmes, do you have a supplementary question to Councillor Eldred?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. School support staff, the children with special needs, the families of those children, Unison, the public want a settlement. And Derby City Council is facing a potential costly legal battle with Unison. So the question is this. Let's put politics to one side when I say this. I think I speak on behalf of the many people who protested today and are in the gallery. Will you please see sense, approach this afresh, sit down with Unison and end this by agreeing a settlement, a compromise that will stop this within days.
Councillor, can we have some quiet, please? Councillor Eldred, would you like to answer that?
Thank you, Councillor Holmes. We also want to see a settlement and an end to this dispute. We have been working tirelessly over months to find a solution to this dispute. We have been meeting with Unison. We continue to meet with Unison. We have never stopped talking to Unison. And I agree with you, Councillor Holmes, that the disruption that this industrial action has caused to parents, to children, both in mainstream schools and special schools, has been very, very difficult. I met with a group of parents today and we had a very honest and frank exchange about the impact that this ongoing industrial dispute is having on their children and on them, their increasing stress levels, the interruption to their children's routines, the impact on their children's behaviour. This dispute has to end. But let us be clear, Unison are staging strikes. Unison have chosen to go out and take industrial action and to disrupt the education of children and to disrupt parents. We want to see a settlement to this dispute. We have been working with Unison. We have been seeking to work with Unison. We have put 3 offers on the table over a period of months to resolve this dispute. The last offer we put to Unison was to the tune of £1.1 million, which included over £500,000 to work with Unison on a school-by-school basis to find a solution to reduce the impact for school support staff. Despite this, Unison have chosen again and again to go out on strike and disrupt the education of children in our special schools and disrupt parents. I urge Unison and the members in the gallery to end industrial action and come back and talk to us and let us find a solution that fits within the financial constraints that this authority has. We have never stopped talking to Unison and we will not stop talking to Unison. We want to end this dispute and we urge you to stop the strikes, come back to the table and stop the disruption in our schools.
If you keep that up, I'll have the public gallery cleared. Exactly. Right, Councillor Ralston, do you have a supplementary question for Councillor Russell?
Yes, Madam Mayor. If you will, just give me a while to compose myself, because as many of you know, this is a real issue personally for me, and I have a lot of family and friends who are involved heavily with SEN children, as well as mainstream children who are well affected by this. I think it's unfair to say that this was minimal impact. I think the biggest thing we've seen so far is the impact on those children. I fully support the TAs. Without the TAs, I would totally be a complete mess. They fully supported my children, should I say. I have two with SEN needs, and you do an amazing job. You are not given the credit that you deserve, in my opinion.
Councillor Alston,
and
can we have your
totally
question,
appreciate
please?
it. Thank you. There are... So I ask if Councillor Russell, and I'm sure she does, along with Councillor Eldred, agrees that it has had a maximum impact on those families. They've lost 9 TAs from Ivy House, I understand, 12 from St Andrews, all with great skill knowledge, hard work. It will be almost impossible to get those TAs back. The school's been impacted. The cost of the recruitment of those TAs to bring back will be impacted. And I'd also just like to ask, in terms of the children and the minimal impact that you're saying, not necessarily that you agree it has on those, there are places like the Lighthouse.
Councillor Ralston, what is your question, please?
Would she agree to sit down with me and help places like the Lighthouse, like Umbrella, like Funability, that have had to, the parents have had to use their respite care to cover the TA's time, because it's the only time that they get. Some of these children have 24 hours, 7 days a week care,
Councillor
and that's
Ralston,
their
you've
respite.
moved from your question now to a statement. What question are you asking, Councillor Russell?
A question. Can we work together, cross-party, politics aside? I understand the TA and Unison have a big issue to resolve, but can we put something in place for those children, the families, and for the health and well-being and the mental health of everybody involved? Please, can you sit down with us and take this going forward? Possibly considering things like a 24-hour...
No, Councillor Ralston, that's it now. You've asked your question. Councillor Russell, can you respond, please?
Yeah, Nicola, thank you for your question. I want to make one thing clear. Nobody in this chamber believes that this industrial action has had a minimal impact on our children and young people. If there's two things I know that unites every single person in this chamber, it's one, that we are concerned about the impact it is having on our children and young people and their education, of course. And the other thing I know that unites us all is that we want a resolution to this. We want a resolution. I can only emphasise what my colleague Councillor Eldred said. Please let us sort it. We want to talk, we want to resolve it. In terms of your request, Nicola, yes, I'll meet with you, I'll discuss with you options. Clearly we'll have to converse with Councillor Eldred as the lead on this issue, but of course, if we can do anything to make the lives of our children and young people easier and their parents and carers easier, then yes, of course we will look to do it.
Thank you. Councillor Poulter, do you have a supplementary question for Councillor Rawson?
I do, Madam Mayor, thank you. Councillor Rawson, thank you for the confirmation that the Council has known that there's been an issue in relation to property asset valuations for at least 15 months, and that the full extent has been known since June last year. The answer, however, does avoid the question of who and when in the administration you knew about this. The question is, when did you as Deputy Leader first know about this, and will you take responsibility for not resolving the issue far earlier and avoiding the expense of over £500,000 to the taxpayers of Derby? Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Poulter. Yes, absolutely. As soon as the issue was was made aware to the leadership. Action was taken immediately to remedy the situation. This is an issue which stretches back over a long period of time and over previous administrations as well. So I'm happy to confirm that the present Labour leadership will always take action as soon as we become aware that there are issues and things aren't being done as they should be. There was a full investigation in line with the Council's policies, and those officers responsible left the authority in June 2016.
Thank you. Councillor Ashburn, do you have a supplementary question for Councillor Rawson?
No, thank you.
Councillor Hassel, do you have a supplementary question for Councillor Afzal?
I do, thank you, Madam Mayor. Can I draw Councillor Afzal's attention to the wording of the question I posed to him, which he seems to have failed to ignore? He's failed. Yes, he has ignored. Yes, let's put it like that. I've asked for detail of the money spent and officer time in each of the wards. That has not been given. He's given officer allocation. So that's my first part. To answer the actual first question, please. The second part is the admission from him that actually, by not giving this information, he's giving way to the suspicion that neighbourhood funding is being squirreled away into wards that his party have a political interest in. Thank you.
Thank you for your supplementary, Councillor. There's no money being squandered, there's no money being given away to Labour groups for everything. It's quite clear in the answer. Those areas in Derby that are deprived where the greatest need is, that's where our officers are working. This is nothing new, Councillor Hassel. If you just pay attention to the Cabinet papers, the meetings come to full council, we've been open and transparent with exactly what's been going on, what's happening, where the neighbourhood officers are. And in light of your government cuts, this is the best we can do, and we are trying. So if you don't understand anything from our Cabinet meeting or full council, I'm quite happy to meet you anytime and discuss it further. Thank you.
Councillor Grimmadale, do you have a supplementary question for Councillor Rawson?
Yes, I do, Madam Mayor. Thank you very much. Good evening, Councillor Rawson. Thank you for the, well, a bit of a non-answer to my question, but here's another chance, and here's my supplementary. Can you name any other saved cultural events that have been informally communicated to officers? Thank you.
Thank you for your question, Councillor Grimmadale. I'm happy to say to you that the leader will be making an announcement as part of the budget speech in due course on the 1st of March.
Thank you. Councillor Kerr, do you have a supplementary question for Councillor Afzal?
When you examine these figures, now I'm disappointed that we haven't got even, I'm disappointed we don't have even preliminary figures for the third quarter for this year. But looking at the first 2 quarters of this year and comparing those with last year, it's encouraging that we're actually creating less household waste and therefore less cost. I have heard rumour that this is because there has been fewer.
Councillor Kerr, have you got a question?
The question is very nearly here. I've heard rumour that this is because there have been fewer, not black bin collections, but skip collections in some areas. So I just want to have confirmation about what it is, what officers or what members believe is the reason for the reduction in black bin waste, and if it is the loss, the no longer putting skips out, how can that reduction be implemented further? Because otherwise we might see the waste going up again next year.
Yeah, thank you for your supplementary, Councillor Kerr. There could be many reasons why people are not using as much waste as they used to. Obviously, we're encouraging people to recycle. there's education out there, and our officers are out there, our neighbourhood officers talking to people. So obviously this is something I know you're quite keen on, and I certainly am. So we will keep an eye on it and try to reduce our waste going to the landfill and encourage more recycling. Thank you.
Councillor Carr, do you have a supplementary question for Councillor Rawson?
Thank you. Councillor Rawson, thank you for the answer. That's quite helpful. I'm disappointed that you haven't got a hard date in there, because I think hard dates tend to focus the mind, and I'm a bit worried about the next couple of years or so. The key phrase is the need for additional housing allocations. So how are you going to protect our green spaces in the face of this need, given that the inspector's modifications to Part 1 lost us a significant amount of green wedges? Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Graves, do you...
Sorry, I was... I think Councillor Carr would like an answer. Sorry, Madam Mayor. Yes, thanks for your question, Councillor Carr, and we'll perhaps discuss the local plan in a bit more detail shortly. I think across the chamber we can agree we'd all have liked the process for Part 1 to have moved a little more quickly than it has done. We are unfortunately bound by national ways of doing these things, and I think officers have actually lost count of the number of cabinet members that at one time or another have steered the core strategy through. So it is a lengthy process, unfortunately, but we will ensure that Part 2 moves forward as quickly as possible. In terms of your question about future allocations, the inspector has confirmed that we do have a 5-year supply, which is good news. That enables the plan to move forward. It also enables the planning committee, when they're making their decisions, to have to be mindful that there's a plan in place, and that the planning committee can be fairly robust in the knowledge that the authorities in a much stronger position in terms of being able to challenge unwelcome planning applications for greenfield sites compared to if we had not got a plan in place, in which case there's a presumption against development, and the developers would be in a much better position to win any appeal. So I hope that answers your question in a sort of roundabout way, Councillor Carr. Happy to talk to you about it afterwards if it doesn't.
Thank you, Councillor Rawson, and I do apologise for that. I wasn't trying to rush the meeting, or not much anyway. Councillor Graves, do you have a supplementary question for Councillor Banwaite? Okay. Councillor Poulter, do you have a supplementary question for Councillor Banwaite?
I do, Madam Mayor, thank you. Councillor Banwaite, thank you for the response, and thank you for confirmation that last year, indeed, there were 600 responses to the Council's budget consultation for last year. I have to say you were warned by myself and this group that this year's consultation was far too short. It was being held over the holiday period and was woefully lacking in detail, which would give the public little or nothing to comment on. And as a result, I am going to ask you, are you actually ashamed that only 38 people, that's 38 people in the whole of the city of Derby, have responded to this year's consultation? And I'm also going to ask you, will you in fact rerun this consultation, and actual fact this time state what you are planning to do to services in the city, and for once be open, transparent and honest with Derby's public? Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Poulter. I'll make it clear that, the type of numbers that are responding to the Council's budget consultations going back many, many years, including under your administration, have historically been low. Am I disappointed that that's the case? Yes, of course. You always want more people to take part. But equally, I recognise that when we launched the big conversation, and in your answer, 600 people took part in the budget consultation for the 3-year budget we set. That is in recognition that what we've set then is a 3-year budget, and actually the low numbers you've seen now is in recognition it's year 2 of 3. So I am confident And I think the next stage is making the budget papers as accessible as possible. That's why we've launched the Derby Newsroom. That's why we're trying to make the budget papers as accessible as we can. Because the reality is, for a city of this size, whether it's 38 or 600, that just simply is not enough. And clearly, you know, we need to do as much as possible. And I think, actually, the Derby Newsroom is a very, very good way of enabling people through their smartphones and their iPads and their desktop computers in the comfort of their home to be able to access the budget consultation documents and then actually put in their responses, and also to contact their local elected members who can represent them and you know, put forward their feedback. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kerr, do you have a supplementary question for Councillor Russell?
I don't want to slightly supplement the information here with the information that was given in question C, which included that there had been 21 EHCPs agreed for December and 17 from November. And I'm surprised that none of those came into the second category A answer. But the overall question is that it's taken 2 years to deal with 350 within the first section. And we've got somewhere in the order of 1,100 or 1,300 to complete by the deadline of April 18. So it's going to be really important that we actually improve our output. So why has it taken from the 12th of December, when the scrutiny committee was told that we were about to go out to tender, to this meeting here, when we're still intending to go out to tender? And when will this actually happen to increase our capacity to deal with these important plans?
Councillor Kerr, as you probably know, it takes a while to create a terms of reference on which to go out to tender for a specific piece of bespoke work like this. I'm sure you can appreciate we can't just have any Tom, Dick or Harry walking into the council house to convert an EHCP plan, which takes a lot of skill, a lot of education to be able to do that, and therefore it takes a while for a proper framework to be designed by which people can apply for that tender. The tender will be formally adopted by Cabinet at next week's meeting, I think, February the 8th, yes, February Cabinet. So that's when the tender will be available for applications.
Thank you. Councillor Graves, do you have a supplementary question for Councillor Rawson? Councillor Kerr, do you have a supplementary question for Councillor Afzal?
Because I think this is a very useful briefing paper, and if other people haven't read this as well as all the other questions in detail, then I recommend that people do. What would be also helpful is whether the additional information that we are not getting on the 2 additional categories on network management and active travel and public transport, whether they could be included in the briefings that we get in future years, that we as ward councillors and as in some cases ward boards are making in terms of the recommendations, and whether that would be able to be done.
Yep, not a problem, Councillor Kerr. Thank you.
We move on to item 8. There are no questions relating to Derbyshire Fire Authority or Derby Homes. There are no questions from non-council cabinet members. Just on those, right? Okay. Right, the minutes from the meeting of Audit and Accounts Committee on the 30th of November requires council approval. Anybody move them?
I'll move them, Chair, as Chair of Audit and Accounts.
Right, okay. The minutes from the meeting of the Council Cabinet on the 18th of January. Okay, sorry. Can we have a seconder for item 10, please? Okay. Okay,
yeah,
right.
Is it approved? Is it carried? Is it carried?
Is it carried? Yeah. Yeah? Okay. Right, minutes from the meeting of the Council Cabinet on the 18th of January requiring Council approval.
Does anybody wish to speak?
Does anybody wish to speak?
Councillor Holmes.
Okay, Councillor Holmes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Obviously at Cabinet I had a fair bit to say about this, and I do thank the Chair for allowing me to waffle on for quite some time, but anyone who knows me will know that one of this related issue is the reason why I got involved in local politics and local campaigning in the first place. While it's very good now to see this process finally reach its conclusion, we have a local plan that isn't perfect. I think we can all agree on that, but at least we're there. It has gone through, as Councillor Rawson will tell you, as the current Cabinet member responsible for this process. 3 Cabinet members, including myself, who launched it initially and carried out the first phase of the first consultation with the various options available. My preferred option, not that it matters anymore, was the option 4, which was a new settlement, which then developed into something of the Garden City kind of vibe that the government are taking forward, but not quite what I intended. I saw this city moving forward on the basis of working with our neighbouring authorities to bring together developers to actually bring new settlements that have space, that have breathing space, that have infrastructure built around them. I still believe that that's the way forward. I think that's the way that we can move forward sustainably. However, the local plan as it is has been agreed by Cabinet, and here tonight is going to be, I assume, agreed by full council. What I will say, and it's just really going over the points I made at Cabinet, and I think they're very important, or they certainly are to me, and many of these points are important, I know, to my group. I have significant concerns over the west side of the city. I know that there's significant developments proposed for the southern side of the city, but if you take the west side of the city on our border, the significant, and many of the developments have already been agreed through planning system, either in Derby City or South Derbyshire District Council, around and Amber Valley at the north, the northwest. 3,500 dwellings approximately is what we're facing now, and that's bolted on to Derby City. It's a massive expansion, an urban expansion of Mickleover and going through to Littleover, etc. Now, the Uttoxeter Road corridor and the Kingsway corridors are the direct route for the west side of the city and these new settlements coming through to the city centre. Now, I know we have proposed changes to the A38. We have the southern scheme as well, but they aren't going to mitigate properly the increased amount of traffic which we're already seeing from the developments which have already been passed through in train through that middle section of the city. We need a plan, and I know kindly Councillor Afzal has agreed to meet with me, and I will take you up that offer to come and meet you and speak with officers about this, because it's a massive concern. We have to plan ahead with that, because we are, seriously, my view is that we're heading for a critical mass there if we don't do something. There's also the issue of the infrastructure such as sewerage, and I know people who are far more knowledgeable than me on that subject believe that the 1.9 million Severn Trent are putting forward is not adequate, and it's not just good enough, I don't think, to say, well, whatever it takes, Severn Trent will have to pay. Well, I think we need a more strategic partnership approach to that to ensure we get the proper infrastructure. And finally, boundary change. Now, we need, I believe, a cross-party consensus on this. For far too long now, we know the reality is that we're a compact city. We have to expand. We have to look at our economic boundary as a new boundary. We have to enshrine that in the council's principles or a policy, at least to say, we agree that we must start looking at this. We should have done this years ago, because if we expand our boundary to where effectively the city will expand to, whether we like it or not, but not by formal boundary with all of these urban extensions, we're not going to be able to move forward as a council. It's not just about revenue, it's not just about new homes bonus, it's not just about council tax. We need to expand to survive, in my view, and that's something fundamentally that this Conservative group believes in. And we would welcome some comments from yourselves, from the Labour group on that, because we think it's the future, we think it's inevitable, whether we put it in place or not. And I think it'd be far better if we were proactive as a council to actually look at that. We would support the council in that move. We hope that you will do that too and take it forward towards part 2 on those basis that we'll actually look towards expanding the city economically I think it's the right thing to do. So I thank you for letting me speak again and repeating quite a lot of what I said in Cabinet, and I'd welcome some comments from Councillor Rawson, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Carr.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll just be brief. I support almost all of what Councillor Holmes just said. I'd just like to correct something that we discussed earlier during my question. I do not believe, and I'm happy to be corrected later, that Derby, within Derby, does not have a 5-year supply. The inspector allowed the modifications on the basis of the Derby housing market area, but Derby does not have a 5-year housing supply at this point in time. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Kerr.
I'd be very interested to know what Councillor Wilson says on this as well, because a lot of what Councillor Holmes has just said is things which are also very close to my heart. And okay, he's looking from Mickleover, I'm looking a bit further south. It's still the west side of Derby, and we have significant problems on the Burton and the Stenson Road corridors, as well as further round. And if you talk to people from Sinfin and it's Normanton, I'm sure they will say Sinfin Lane also. But we need to look beyond that. We need to look more and more beyond our city boundaries. We need to be thinking about not just housing, but our transport and our transport links beyond the boundaries. And to do that, we either need to significantly improve the way we work at member level and at local ward member level, and not just at cabinet member level, on the way in which we can work with the county council on transport and with the districts on the housing and the housing infrastructure. And I think if we could organise, and through you, to organise some member-led meetings about what our vision is for a shared cross-boundary development. We've intended to work as part of the housing market area. And I think we need to do that now for part 2. And I think if we can set something up that will work in that way, it would give us reassurance, and I think hopefully it would also give officers reassurance that we can come together with a workable cross-boundary vision for the way in which Derby can expand without getting itself log-jammed with transport problems and ending up with problems on housing and school locations, and we can build in economic opportunity as well as housing in a way that works together and doesn't generate more and more transport challenges. So that's my plea, that we can set up something to work cross-boundary with the county and with the districts, so that members who have those concerns can come together and work actively at solutions that will work for our communities.
Thank you. Can we go on to item 11?
Martin to respond.
Oh, sorry.
Well, Councillor Banwick to move them. And
No.
Councillor Rawson
Martin wanted to respond to the last one.
Okay, Councillor Rawson, if you want to respond. Yeah.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to thank members from across the chamber for your positive comments. I think we all know that this is a challenge, particularly on the west side and the south side of Derby, as has been mentioned. The government gives us a model which tells us the number of new homes that Derby and our neighbouring authorities needs to provide over the next 15 years or so. That's a given, that's what we have to work with. So our job as local members is to come to the best possible solution we can to provide those number of new homes in the best possible locations with the minimal amount of impact on existing residents. I think when you talk to residents, the concern is about infrastructure, as Councillor Holmes and Councillor Kerr have both said, mainly roads, medical facilities, schools, and opportunities for sustainable transport such as cycling and walking. So that is very much at the forefront of our minds, Madam Mayor, in working with the developers in delivering the new homes, is making sure that that infrastructure is there and that the impact on the existing residents is as small as we can possibly make it. I'd like to mention the City Centre Living Initiative. The core strategy does include plans for 2,000 new homes in the city centre, Castle Ward, the DRI site, hopefully Friargate Goods Yard as well. So that, by delivering that, that will take significant pressure off those greenfield sites on the edge of the city, although by no means all the pressure. Just in terms of expanding the boundaries, Councillor Holmes, I think it's an issue that we're going to have to explore over the next few years. As I said at Cabinet, it's not a panacea because yes, it would generate extra council tax, but it also does generate extra responsibilities for this authority which costs money, such as social care and education and so on of those residents who are coming into the city boundaries for the first time. And finally, Councillor Kerr, yes, on your point of setting up member-led meetings, absolutely. I think we can do that, no problem, to liaise particularly with ward councillors in those wards on the edge of the city where there are going to be significant new housing developments. So happy to take that forward and to talk to officers to facilitate that. I think that's covered everything, Madam Mayor. So I move the motion. Thank you.
Okay, move to item 11, minutes from the Council Cabinet meeting on the 18th of January. We need to approve minute 13116, adoption of Derby City Local Plan Part 1 Core Strategy. Does anybody wish to speak?
I just have.
I just have, right.
All those in favour?
All those in favour?
Okay, any against?
Those against?
Okay, it's approved.
Right. So we're going to
The minute 132.
minute 13216, council tax base for 2017-18. Does anybody wish to speak?
Those in favour?
Those in favour?
Against?
Those against?
Okay, that's carried. That's item 12.
Thank you. Item 12, appointment to the Standards Committee. We have a report of the Monitoring Officer recommending the appointment of Mr Stuart Green as a new independent member. The report contains information about Mr Green, which I'm sure that you've all got. Councillor Shanker, as Chair of Standards Committee, will you move this, please?
Formally like to move the report, Madam Mayor.
Seconder? Okay. Is it approved? Yeah? Yeah, thank you. Item 13 is a constitutional amendment, which is the report of the Monitoring Officer recommends some required tweaks to the Council Constitution and specifically scheme of delegations. Will somebody move this? Anybody second it? Councillor Barton. Is that approved? Right, now we come to the motions.
Madam Mayor, could I raise a point of order? I'd like to move a notice without motion under CP 41N for November. The Council resolves that the Council Procedure Rules CP 11 to CP 34 and CP 39 and 40 shall be suspended for the meeting of the Council on the 1st of March 2017 in order that the primary focus of the debate at the meeting is consideration of the Council's budget. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Right, the motion is carried.
Madam Mayor, may I just ask for a clarification of what's just been agreed by the Labour Group, please? Specifically. Yeah, there's a lot of CPs there, Councillor.
Madam Mayor, it's to suspend the questions and the motions so that it's just a budgetary meeting.
Stifling democracy, no problem. Thank you very much.
Councillor Kerr.
I just wondered why that hadn't been put on as a procedural motion for this time, rather than coming to us at this point. It could have been the item 17 that we didn't have.
Right, item 14. The Mad Hatter's Tea Room, which is moved by Councillor Graves and seconded by Councillor Evans. Does anybody wish to speak on this?
Madam Mayor, can you just explain, am I not allowed to speak on this? Well, can I speak on it then? It's just... I have to say, Madam Mayor, and I bow to those that use the CP numbers. I have no idea what just went off. But maybe that's the game the Labour Party play.
Democracy was removed, Councillor Graves.
Thank you, Councillor Holmes. Before I start on this, Madam Mayor, I'd just like to read out something from Michael Schofield on behalf of the Alveston Park Friends, because he was under the impression that he could come to this meeting and speak. And so I'm going to read out what he was going to say about the Mad Hatter's Cafe. A business plan. The cost of refurbishing plus expenditures and fittings upwards of £20,000. Wages a minimum of £50,000 to £60,000 per annum based on only 4 employees plus employers' contribution. If it's run like Mark Eaton Park, it will only be selling chips, confectionery, ices and ice cream, which have a very limited markup. The area has a small populace, London Road and Croughton to the south. Wilmorton to the west, North River to the north and business to the east. So it's only populated on 2 sides of the park. The current customer bias, as all say, they will boycott a council-run cafe, which means little or no revenue coming in. 8 people will lose their jobs. They will put them on benefits, and although the government would pay their benefits, it still comes out of the public purse. Some of the pro forma employee will have to claim housing benefit, of which will come out of the council purse. These have to be calculated into the equation. However, as it stands at the moment, you have a guaranteed income without the aforementioned problems, hopefully for many years to come. And then he said, thank you for listening. Madam Mayor, you'll be aware of the Mad Hatter's Cafe. It was somewhere you visited many times when you were a councillor for Alveston. And so I'm sure you will appreciate the value of this facility and the cosy and welcoming atmosphere Carrie and Dawn and their team have created with their regular customers and wider community for our lovely park. Mad Hatters was started when the new pavilion was built after a series of fires and an application that I was involved in as the then cabinet member to the Football Foundation. The council did not want the uncertainty of a new start-up business, rightly so, at the time of the opening of the new pavilion. All the risk was with the owners of the Mad Hatters, and they embraced the challenge and have created a fantastic business. UKIP believe that enterprise by local people should be encouraged and nurtured. Unfortunately, this council has decided not to reward this hard work and look to take away this valued business by choosing not to renew the Mad Hatter's Tea Room lease. Members may or may not be aware that the tenancy did not include any equipment, but did state that any alterations or equipment would become the property of the council should the tenancy end. The cost of the kitchen equipment, which must be left for the council to utilise, was purchased to the tune of tens of thousands of pounds. This is a complete travesty and a slap in the face of the hard-working owners of the cafe. In the first few years of a business, it takes tenacity, and hard work to grow a business and turn any sort of profit. The Mad Hatters owners and employees have embraced this, and through word of mouth and engaging with local residents and park users, the business grew. Years of hard work building up a small business was just the beginning, to pay something back when the council introduced their own localised nationalisation of services. Is this what the Labour Party decree? Watch a hard-working family work hard and then, bam, kick them in the teeth. It may have also been overlooked that part of the tenancy included public toilet cleaning, something the owners agreed to do. The council benefited greatly, the park benefited greatly, and the voluntary group, the Alveston Park Friends, benefited greatly. Has the additional cost of cleaning toilets been considered, or will the park's toilets become a casualty of cost-saving exercises? Does not the council talk about business investment, jobs, the local economy, etc., etc.? Where does this fit into your ethos? Where is the trust for local people? Now, I'm used to looking over my shoulder, but devastating this family business for the sake of £5,000 a year, and before you make up some fantastic figure that will contribute to the council budget, I have it on good authority that the council hope, yes, hope, to make around £5,000 on top of the £5,000 rental income. Leaving it in this small business's hand guarantees the council the rental income, which I understand the owners have offered to increase. Those figures pale into insignificance when you realise that the Labour leader has employed an unnecessary communications consultant for £60,000, probably to try and help him win his election in 2018. So is this all about income? No, because the opposition to this didn't come from the cafe owners, who feel they are helpless, but from the many hundreds of users of the cafe that appreciate not only the quality of service and food, but the continuation of the opening hours throughout the year. The Alveston Park Friends group will also lose that above the call of duty help the cafe provide when there are functions put on by the groups in all hours. The stargazing events in the evening, the craft events, the Easter events, the summer fete, which is now the biggest voluntary fete in the city. All this will be under the threat from a city council-run cafe. I have no doubt it is under threat. Look at Chaddesden Park, where Derby Live took over their cafe, and now run by volunteers. Now, I am a supporter of Derby Live, but only in what they're good at. Running a small cafe is not their forte, and we should remember that. Unless there is some clandestine plan to rob bona fide business folk of their small businesses and livelihoods and sell them to some bigger corporate entities, such is your deviousness, I wouldn't put it past you. Alveston has stability in the current cafe and doesn't need this insecurity. Some residents have even looked up what protection the owners have under the Landlords and Tenants Act of 1954. Unfortunately, it seems your contract with them specifically excludes a right to renew. You seem to have excluded those sections from the Landlord and Tenant Act 1954 that give some protection to tenants to protect them from unscrupulous landlords, evicting them from successful businesses at the end of a tenancy. Do you not think the council should act in the spirit of the law, not simply as commercial landlords, as we are an instrument of the state which enacted the law? This action merely acts against Derby residents and businesses. I believe Carrie and Dawn have a reasonable expectation to continue with their present arrangements. Notwithstanding the fact that these rules may have been opted out, I would think it would be remiss of the council to rely on this to the letter. If it is in place, and to act against the council ratepayer and business. Councillor Banwaite, your reputation in this city is in the gutter. You are vilified not only by your political rivals, but by some of those within your own party. The residents of Alveston Derby deserve better than your dysfunctional policies. You must put aside your own political dogma and personal crusade and look in the mirror and admit you are wrong and your colleagues are wrong by supporting you. Why, oh why, would you want another nail in the coffin for an extra potential income of £5,000? Remember, just as many of your Bolton Ward constituents use the park, as do Alveston Ward constituents. I'm not asking you to change your mind for me, but for them, because they want you to. Do it for them, Councillor Banwaite. Madam Mayor,
Any more of that and I will suspend the meeting.
Madam Mayor, I formally propose this motion to Council.
Thank you. Councillor Evans, I believe that you're seconding it. Do you wish to speak?
I do, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, we have heard Councillor Graves speak passionately against the proposed lease termination of Mad Hatter's Tea Room. I have been a councillor in Ulverston for less than a year, and during that time I have become fully aware of how cherished this business has become. I would like to ask in the upcoming vote on this motion for Councillor Bayliss to support this motion. I would say to you, Councillor Bayliss, our fellow Ulverston councillor, to put aside that Councillor Graves, myself and UKIP have put in this motion. I ask you to try to think of this motion coming from the residents, supporters and owners of the Mad Hatter's Tea Room. The vast majority of the residents I have engaged with wish to keep the Mad Hatter's Tea Room open with the current management and to renew the lease. In fact, thousands of people have signed a petition to that effect. This was set up by Brian Farthing, who I believe is here this evening, who I would like to thank for setting up that petition. Does that not indicate to you the swell of support for this business? Unfortunately, due to the draconian changes relating to public petitions implemented last year by the controlling Labour Party, the criteria for the public to submit petitions is much more difficult now, making it much harder for the people of Derby to be heard. Hence, the petition submitted in support of the Mad Hatters was recently rejected on various technicalities. The proposed closure of the Mad Hatter's Tea Room is purely a political decision by Councillor Banwaite. In this instance, you could back the people of Ulverston, not the Labour Party. Councillor Bayliss, you recently said in the previous full council meeting that voting on the electoral cycle changes was a shameful decision by those that voted against. Well, if you vote against this motion, I feel you will be acting in the self-interest and your decision will be considered shameful by many residents of Ulverston. Come on, Councillor Bayliss, as a fellow Ulverston councillor, support this motion. It's your choice, not your political masters. Thank you.
Does anybody wish to speak? Councillor Ingle.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, for this opportunity to speak. I feel I'm well placed to speak on this issue, as my family were small business owners. We had newsagents in both Derby and Nottingham. The one in Spondon will be best known. So we understand what it takes to start a business up and what it takes out of you and your family. The hard work, the blood, the sweat, the tears it takes after years and years of slogging your guts out, working all the hours God sends, you may, just may, start to make a little bit out of it. It takes years to build this up. This council not wanting to renew the cafe lease. Why? Surely selling cups of tea isn't council business. Council should concentrate on services it should be providing and being a good landlord, not watching on as somebody else does all the hard work for you, then snatch the rug from under them and take it over yourself. When I look at some of the actions and decisions that are made, not only in this place, but others too, we have the Police and Crime Commissioner giving £25,000 away to a company which is doing no work in Derby, but which is run by two Labour candidates. One, I believe, is Councillor West's husband. Councillor Pegg's letter of apology to the New Zealand Community Association basically told them, never tell them I had to apologise or I'll report you to the authorities. And then we have here tonight Councillor Pegg asking Councillor Banwaite a question. Tell us how bad their rent arrears are. That's disgusting. And that should not be, what does that say about you as a landlord? It says, we'll publicly shame you. That's disgraceful behaviour. And I turn to Councillor Bayliss, whose ward this cafe is in. What does he do to help? Does he look at the facts and speak to the council to find out why and really look into the business case? No. All he does is write on social media, and I quote, "Nice if they'd paid their rent on time." That is shocking. How dare you, Councillor Bayliss, how dare you release what is, in my opinion, private business between the cafe owner and the council. You should not even have had access to that information, let alone put it on social media. I can only assume that Councillor Bayliss is not standing for election again, as he clearly goes away against the will of the people he represents. I remember when Councillor Bayliss lost his seat in 2006. He ran up the stairs at the Moorway Centre and cried. Here you are, Paul. There's some tissues for you. I think you're going to need them when you dry your eyes, mate, if you restand. Shut up. My friends on this side of the chamber fully support this cafe and its owners and would not have taken this action. Our job is to let business work in Derby and not to pull the rug from under them. We've heard here tonight some dreadful actions by some of these Labour councillors, not mentioning those two at the front. I've never, in my years in this council, I have never heard any member of the public come in here and shout the leader down and shout him out. That is absolutely shocking. I've also never heard unions shouting up the Conservative Party. That's two things I've never heard. What I will say, Madam Mayor, to finish is the Labour Party, half of them are disingenuous. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Nater.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm just going to be very quick. A question. A council that has over £200 million
I'm sorry, I'm just enjoying it.
Just have over £200 million of budget. What do they want with £5 grand? Simple.
Councillor Eldred.
Sorry, I will be very brief. Councillor Ingle, you should be ashamed of yourself. This is a very serious issue, which is obviously very dear to the hearts of the people. It is the people concerned with it and people of Alveston, and we are trying to debate this issue. And the fact that you try and reduce that debate to baseless allegations about members of the Labour group and personal attacks on members of the Labour group is shameful. Let's debate the issues and let's have a full and frank debate. If you are descending to personal attacks and playing the person and not the ball, you've obviously got nothing important to say.
Councillor Kerr, do you wish to speak?
I didn't hear that. Can I?
Councillor Kerr. Councillor Kerr.
My turn now. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I am sad. I haven't actually been to Mad Hatters, but I've heard things about it. I've read about it on the Facebook group. I know it exists. But we also have many other buildings which the council owns in other parks, in other places, such as bowls clubs, community centres, and similar buildings, which the council is constantly saying, would somebody like to look after this? And it says, you know, would you, Bowls Club, like to be responsible for your building? Would you, Community Association, like to be responsible for your building? Now, here we have a group who is responsible for their building. They're making their building a success. They're paying the council money while they make that building a success. If we could learn from this example and make some more of our problem buildings a success with an organisation running them, perhaps that's what we should be doing. We should be going to Mad Hatters and saying, thank you. Could you share what you are doing in your area with this other potential entrepreneur? who wants to work in one of our other parks and make that building another success. Let's learn where from success is, not squash them into non-existence.
Does anybody else wish? Yeah, Councillor Rawson wishes to sum up. So, Councillor Skelton.
Right, I've been listening very carefully to everybody, and it's been interesting that nobody from the Labour group has got up and said, given a logical reason as to why they want to end this lease. So I think it'll be Councillor Russell who has the opportunity to do that. But I must say, the way that this has been debated, or not debated, discussed, particularly the release of what ought to be confidential financial information relating to the business, is really quite below the belt.
Councillor Rawson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll ignore Councillor Ingall's contribution as quite appalling, and all I can say is it's a good job that we haven't got Councillor Nater running the budget.
Can we settle down up there, please?
Thank you. And I'd also just like to say it's a good job we've not got Councillor Nater running the budget, who thinks 5k simple, that all is solved. So we're very lucky we're not in that position, Madam Mayor. I'd like to begin, though, by thanking the ladies and gentlemen in the public gallery who've come to listen to the debate this evening regarding the future of the cafe in Alveston Park. It's obviously a very emotive issue, and we all, I'm sure, appreciate the time that you've put into making your views known. I'd also like to thank the current leaseholders, who I understand are here tonight, for the work you've done in running Mad Hatter's Tea Rooms in recent years. And let me be clear, the quality of the service that's been provided to customers has never been in question. However, as you're aware, the Council faces unprecedented challenges when it comes... Thank you. The Council does face unprecedented challenges. That's not a question of opinion, that is a matter of fact. And when it comes to ensuring public services in Derby remain sustainable in years to come, and that's no easy task for whoever is charged with running this authority. As the controlling group, we're faced with difficult decisions on a daily basis, and we're expected to make choices that may not always be popular, but are in the best interests of the city as a whole. This includes maximising the revenue the council can obtain from the buildings that it owns, as is the case with the decision to bring the cafe at Alveston Park in-house. Councillor Graves has been keen to frame this issue as a black and white issue, as uncaring council shutting a successful family business. But unsurprisingly, the reality is a little different, and a number of operational factors have to be considered. Firstly, I would like to reiterate that the tea room in Alveston Park will not be closing.
Can we have some quiet, please, from the public gallery?
Contrary to...
Well, you'd hear him better if you were quiet.
Firstly, Madam Mayor, I would like to reiterate that the tea room in Alveston Park will not be closing, subject to certain rumours put out in the area. Instead, the operation is being proposed to be brought in-house and managed by the same team that run the Orangery at Mark Eaton Park, as well as cafes at Chaddeston Park and the Derby Arena. By bringing the management of these successful cafeterias together, we can reduce the administrative costs and improve the services that are available at parks across the city. Furthermore, the revenues generated can be reinvested directly back into the maintenance of our parks and green spaces.
If you are not quiet, then I will adjourn the meeting.
It is for this reason primarily why the lease is not being considered for renewal. But there are other considerations too. It's my opinion that this meeting is not the right forum for discussing the operational details of whether the lease on the tea room should be renewed. But in bringing the motion, Councillor Graves has forced the issue. In considering whether to renew the lease, we not only have to look at the service provided to the public, but also their record as tenants of the council. Nevertheless, we appreciate the work that has been carried out by the existing tenants and are happy to continue to discuss matters with them privately. As has been widely reported, subject to meeting the qualifying criteria, the staff working at Mad Hatter's Tea Rooms can transfer to council employment under TUPE regulations. This remains an option to all of those who may be interested. Moreover, the operation of the cafe has no bearing on Alveston Park's green flag status, as Councillor Graves has alleged. In fact, this decision will ensure greater revenue is generated for investment, safeguarding the park's future. The Labour-led administration of the City Council is...
Councillor Rawson.
I'm sorry, Madam Mayor, I've been disrupted and interrupted on a number of occasions. So I will finish.
Carry on.
Councillor Graves' motion is fundamentally wrong on a number of occasions. The cafe will remain open.
We did pause the clock.
So, to sum up, Madam Mayor, the cafe will remain open, the green flag won't be affected, there is no evidence of a drop in quality or price increase, and the offer of TUPE transfer is available to the employees, so employment is available elsewhere. And the council will be happy to support the business in terms of their ongoing future. So, regrettably, Madam Mayor, we cannot support this motion.
Councillor Baylist.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My view on this is very simple. This could have been settled and discussed on a cross-party basis, but I always quite enjoy being lectured by two ex-members of the Labour Party, and it has to be said, we did teach them well. I mean, they've beaten this up into a frenzy. So the fact of the matter is that we want to invest money in Alveston Park. One of the ways of doing that is ensuring that the council retains the profit from the cafe. There's a lease involved in that. The council has given notice on that. I expect that the council also had a rent-free period when the operator put in the kitchen equipment. I know this for a fact. I've negotiated on behalf of the YMCA and the council when they were setting up the operation on Nightingale Road. The council is continuing to invest in Alveston Park. It's committed to putting K barriers in to restrict off-road motorcycles, and we'll be doing that. Once we've done that, we can actually take some action in conjunction with the police, who've agreed to do an operation at the back. And the other thing is, this council, this Labour council, has secured £11,434 from Section 106 agreement with Speedies in Alveston to invest in the park. My view on this is very simple. I accept entirely that it's very sad for the people involved, but TUPE has been offered. This motion could not be passed by council as it stands because there's a presumption, a predisposition from this council that these people would be allowed the contract. And under our financial regulations, that actually isn't allowed. It has to go out without any predetermination of who could be the supplier in the future. And the other fact is, it's been mentioned and poo-pooed by quite a lot of people, is that we can only reinvest in the park if the proprietors actually pay the rent. You're all right, it's very well saying that it's a great operation and we'll pay more rent, but if you don't actually pay the rent in the first place, which is a bit of a fundamental, you do put a question mark. You do put a question mark over the viability of the business going forward, particularly if you want the landlord to take a view that would enable the business to move forward. And the other thing is that we could have resolved this in a different way. Councillor Graves and Councillor Evans decided to take this route through to full council motion. I've got no issue with that. Certainly I understand a political manoeuvre when I see one. I also think that we ought to reflect, Madam Mayor, that when Ulverston Parks was set up by Philip Oldenshaw, and I was member number 2 at the time, it was set under the basis that it would be a non-political, non-partisan organisation. And this sort of thing, for me, says there's a question mark against that, which is a great shame, because Ulverston Park and Ulverston Park Friends do a fantastic job in the park. You can see that over a number of years. And I just think we need to reflect on the fact that we need to invest as much money in the park as we can. And this is the way of the council doing it, in terms of investing more money, having certainty of that, and enabling it to move forward in the future. So I accept entirely it's not a very comfortable position. And I've been personally attacked by a number of people across this chamber. I'm a big boy with a thick skin. And Phil Ingle is right about one thing. I was very upset in 2006 when I lost. I won in 2007. And by the time my term up in 2019, I'll have served with honour the Ulverston residents for 22 years. And I don't need a lecture from people who've defected from the Labour Party at any stage in this. I know what my duty is. It's to ensure there's investment. There's an investment in Ulverston Park. And I also find it interesting that people wish to shout at me at the time. It's always interesting. If they're silent, I'm quite happy to answer and stand up for these things. I always do. And it's a matter of what's the right thing to do. This, I'm afraid, has been whipped up to a political frenzy for a political reason by UKIP. I'm afraid we need to make sure we invest in the park, and we need to make sure that we invest in the park, and we can only do that if we have income coming in and people paying the rent. If you don't pay the rent, don't expect anything else. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Graves, do you wish to sum up?
Well, Madam Mayor, I've heard some arguments. At least some people stood up and spoke from the Labour Party. Excellent. The only people making it political in this arena is Councillor Bayliss, actually, by bringing it up as a political issue. My motion was a mirror image of a petition that was raised by residents. They were stopped bringing that petition here because of technical matters that the council had put forward, and the only thing that I could offer them was a motion. In fact, I'm a UKIP councillor. It came from a UKIP councillor. But it is a residents' motion, not a UKIP motion. And I'm a proud member of the Ulverston Park Friends. I was there at its inception and helped it grow, and I will always be a member of the Ulverston Park Friends. I was. It was the fact that I was interested in the park. It didn't matter which party I was in. I was interested in the park. As you can imagine, Madam Mayor, I'm extremely disappointed. My reason for putting this motion forward initially was because the petition raised by the residents was ignored by this council on a technical basis. So half the signatories were dismissed. I felt that it was unfair, so I had to put this motion on the agenda for them. I believe in listening to my constituents, and I will always do that when I can. The facts around the cafe are that they have been treated abominably, having their tenancy withdrawn just because you can. And the local people have had their wishes ignored, and the park will lose a valuable business and friend. As a former Alveston councillor, Madam Mayor, surely you will support these people, or will you be spiteful for not being re-elected by them? And Councillor Bayliss, you know how the Alveston Park Friends work, and the numerous constituents that have contacted and feel about this. You should stick up for them. Will you support the ward you represent? The people expect. Will you be up to it? One councillor that's been silent tonight is Councillor Anderson. Councillor Anderson, one of your residents mentioned you to me, and he was almost sure that he would get you to vote for this motion. Maybe you can offer some hope here. The owners of this special cafe find itself in a bizarre situation of making go of a small business, being supported by local people and being evicted for a very small profit. Members of the Chamber, the argument for the Council is weak, and I ask you to support this motion. Madam Mayor, under CP 71, I ask for a recorded vote.
Would members please indicate whether they are for or against the motion as I read out their names? Councillor Afzal. Councillor Anderson. Councillor Ashburner. For. Councillor Banwaite. Councillor Barker. Councillor Bayliss. Councillor Bolton. Sorry. Councillor Kerr.
For. I think we should have put an amendment in there.
Councillor Carr. Councillor Dinser. Councillor Eldred. Councillor Evans. Councillor Froggatt. Councillor Graves. Councillor Grimmerdale. Councillor Harwood. Councillor Hassel. Councillor Hazelgrave. Councillor Alison Holmes. Councillor Matthew Holmes. Councillor Hudson. Councillor Hussain. Councillor Ingle. Councillor Jackson. Councillor Keith. Councillor Jangir Khan. Councillor Shiraz Khan. Councillor Nater. Councillor Nawaz. Councillor Pegg. Councillor Potter. Councillor Poulter. Councillor Raju. Councillor Rawson. Councillor Repton. Councillor Ralston. Councillor Russell. Councillor Sandhu. Councillor Shanker. Councillor Skelton.
For.
Councillor Smale. Councillor Stanton. Councillor Turner. Councillor Webb. Councillor West. Councillor Whitby. Councillor Wood. The Mayor, Councillor Winter.
Against.
Right, so the motion is lost, so we'll move on to item 15.
Right, okay, thank you. The motion is lost, and we'll move on to item 15. No.
Members of the Council, this meeting is currently now in suspension, and I will advise you when we're going to resume.